Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to our ESMT event series, Today's Global Leaders. Thank you very much for joining us. And we also would like to welcome our online audience watching us through the live stream. Great to have you with us as well. Let me introduce myself. My name is Astrid Frohloff. I'm a TV moderator, a TV journalist, and executive coach. And I have the pleasure to lead you through tonight's event. As you know, at today's global leaders, successful business leaders position themselves on current political and economic topics and share their insights and their leadership philosophies with us. And we are very glad to say that this event series became more and more a not only a nice to have, but a must-have event in the events calendar of Berlin. Maybe you remember the very fantastic discussions we had earlier with Ola Källenius Mercedes, Carsten Spohr, Lufthansa, Roland Busch, Siemens. And today we are very glad to welcome a leading personality from the finance sector who will share insights on navigating Deutsche Bank through rough times. Please give a very warm welcome to Christian Sewing, CEO Deutsche Bank. Dear guests, let me mention that this event would not be possible without the generous support of the Karl Schlecht Stiftung and IZF, Institute Zukunftsfähige Führung, a great platform for dialogue on leadership. Thank you very much for this support. We're very grateful about this. And I'm passing over the mic now to Uta Menges, member of IZF. Welcome, Uta. Are you taking the mic? Yeah. Okay.
Danke. Yeah, it's a great pleasure for me also to welcome you here today, all the guests here in the audience and also our participants online. I am a representative of IZF, Initiative Zukunftsfähige Führung. And I would like to thank ESMT for this wonderful collaboration in this wonderful series. Thank you for having us here today. And with you, Christian Sewing, thanks also to be here as our discussion partner today. We kick off the third year of this event and the fifth session. Wonderful that we are so successful and have the wonderful guests who get the interest of so many participants. But before we start with today's speakers, let me give you some insights in IZF, Initiative Zukunftsfähige Führung. As our focus is on future leadership, we are very thankful that well-known speakers share their experiences with us. And the core of our association is to foster dialogue and exchange on leadership topics. And our offerings and events count on sharing different perspectives to gain new insights, to get fresh inspiration, to broaden the mindset and reflecting own opinions by receiving valuable feedback. We discuss how to develop leaders to be prepared for future issues. What understanding of leadership do we need to master transformation, challenges and crises? And how do we inspire the younger generations to get successful leaders? Let me give you some examples of upcoming events we have at IZF. On Friday, 14th of June, you can participate in an online session called Macchiato. After your lunch break, we will wrap up today's session and exchange our feedbacks and learnings. Take part at 1 p.m. You can find all information on our website. The next meeting in Berlin takes place on Tuesday, 25th of June. It's called Leaders Lounge, and we invite inspiring leaders to discuss their career learnings and upcoming plans. It's a little bit like this event, but very much more familiar in a smaller group with a chance to network and discuss directly with each other. Our next guest is Stefan Fack, CEO of Lotao, and we will talk about the future of food and looking at trends like artificial intelligence and other trends in the food industry. Besides our events, we offer so-called dialogue centers. These are teams of interested colleagues who meet regularly to discuss specific areas of leadership. As example, I want to mention the Dialogue Center Leading with Personality, in which the aspects of leadership are combined with the development of future leaders and especially with focus on their personality. Which mindset and personal characteristics are needed to master complex transformation? The discussion is based on an empirically founded development stage model, and our aim is to develop a leadership tool for self-assessment and also external feedback for leaders. If all this sounds interesting to you, I'm happy if you take a look at our website or get in touch with us. I have also two colleagues today with me, Patrick here and Martin. So don't hesitate to talk with us after the event to get more information, and I see you too in one of our next events. Now I'm happy to pass over to Astrid again, our wonderful moderator of this evening.
Thank you so much, Uta Menges. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today in our discussion, we will focus on a sector which plays an essential role in transformation in our economy, the financial system, which is a backbone and the infrastructure for all kinds of transformations going on in real economy. And we are very happy that Jörg Rocholl, ESMT president, is finding time to join us today. He is not only chair of the advisory board of the German Federal Ministry of Finance, but also Deutsche Bank professor in sustainable finance at ESMT. And he will set the stage with his opening remarks now. Looking forward to his speech. Welcome, Jörg Rocholl.
Thank you very much, Astrid. Thank you very much for setting the scene. Thank you very much to Karl Schlecht Stiftung, to IZF, Institute für Zukunftsfähige Forschung. It is great that we have this long-lasting collaboration and that we can really listen and learn from the most distinguished business leaders in Germany and in Europe. So in particular, we are very excited to welcome Christian Sewing, the CEO of Deutsche Bank, and, by the way, also the Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the ESMT Foundation. It's a great pleasure that you're here with us today. And again, also warm welcome from my side. Thank you. Why am I excited and delighted to have the opportunity, and why are we excited and delighted to have the opportunity to welcome Christian Sewing to this session today? Christian brings with him an extensive expertise over many decades at Deutsche Bank. In particular, he joined Deutsche Bank in 1989, had various leadership roles across the bank in various parts of the world, in various parts of the business of Deutsche Bank. And going, you could say, through all the complexities, the opportunities that the financial sector, that globally oriented banks such as Deutsche Bank can provide. At the same time, as you all know, before Christian took the leadership position, the CEO position at Deutsche Bank, the bank by no means was in easy conditions. I remember very well, for example, the final, unfortunately not final, verdict by the Department of Justice in the United States. I think it was in the fall of 2016 when the initial penalty threat of 14 billion came out. So 14 billion for violation or say seeming violation of certain rules. And this obviously created a shockwave, not only here in Germany, but much beyond. It was a question, what is going to happen? I think many banking supervisors, politicians really got alerted by exactly this. And what we can see is that through the leadership that Christian Sewing has provided to Deutsche Bank, these stories are history. These stories have really been changed completely. And this obviously not being a very easy task. The task, in fact, was quite actually challenging. It included necessarily cutting costs, cutting jobs, cutting bonuses for, say, investment bankers. One may say also, you could say, in my words, sometimes spoiled investment bankers. Because this is also what research shows that, and I'll come back to this, that the bonus pool often didn't reflect just performance, but it became, you could say, a certain habit there. So at the same time, the results of the change became visible also after actually rather short period of time. So in 2020, for the first time in many years, the bank again showed, Deutsche Bank showed again a net income of more than 600 million. The highest in years, after many years in which there was no profit. And in that sense, the change was also not overseen by those leading media that actually look at the performance of Deutsche Bank. So, for example, to take a quote from Wall Street Journal, Christian Sewing has pulled Deutsche Bank to firmer ground. The bank makes more money on routine transactions for companies. That has made revenues more stable, which together with cost controls has returned the bank to profit. So it indeed was a change from a bank that really came under harsh criticism, not only in financial markets, but much beyond, into a bank that actually regained trust, that regained reputation. And then in particular, I would say that held promises that were made. So in that sense, that whatever the expectation, the announcement was, it was met by realistic implementation. Also, regarding this, these legal trouble that I mentioned have become much, much less. They helped enormously to stabilize the bank. And in that sense, also paving the way forward to a very remarkable turnaround in the past few years. I'd like to mention maybe one of the best known analysts for the banking sector, and this is Stuart Graham, co-founder and partner of Autonomous. So, as I said, a banking analyst. And he basically made the following description in 2017. He said, Deutsche Bank is beyond repair. What he meant is there's basically no hope. It will fail. There's nothing that we could hope for. At the same time, with the start of Christian's leadership, basically also made the very clear statement of mea culpa. Mea culpa meaning I was wrong. Actually, I got it wrong, and I now see that the bank is actually in much better shape than I had predicted. So, for example, in 2023, after the crisis starting with Silicon Valley Bank and other regional banks in the United States, and the concern or the question whether Deutsche Bank could be the next Credit Suisse, he very clearly said Deutsche Bank is not the next Credit Suisse. Also, when we look at one of his most recent statements this year, he basically said, and the headline is already interesting, he said, much improved when it comes to European banks, Deutsche Bank in particular, much improved with more to come. So it's not just basically a transitory improvement, but rather something that actually builds the ground for more to come. And there's also, and now I come back to why I said this, there's also a very interesting statement in this analyst report where he says, there was the old joke that European investment banks were a good place to be employed, but not a good place to be a shareholder. So you could say the revenues or the profits that were generated in the banks exclusively went to the employees or the bankers, but not to the shareholders. And what he basically said then is, using the example of Deutsche Bank, this is no longer valid. So in that sense, there's a balanced allocation of what is generated to those who actually generate it and those who provide the capital in the first place and would like to get also compensated for providing this capital. So in that sense, you can see a very successful, a very sustainable, and I mean this in the best sense of this word, a very sustainable repositioning that Christian Sewing has led, and that also has led to confidence in the bank's stability, confidence in the returns the bank can generate, and to transform Deutsche Bank into a what is interesting, global house bank. This may first sound a little bit, you could say, German, but in fact, coming from my own or looking at my own research in the United States and my time in the United States, the house bank principle is something that is known worldwide. I mean, it's really one of those German expressions such as probably Angst and Schadenfreude that everyone knows of. So it's really it's something that is very important. At the same time, and this is now where I would like to go a little bit beyond Deutsche Bank. Christian Sewing has been one of the strongest advocates for the European Capital Markets Union whom I could imagine. It's only half jokingly, I would say that in any speech I could read, you actually push for this European Capital Markets Union. And as I would like to add, for very good reasons, for very important reasons. I could witness the speech Christian Sewing gave at the Deutsche Bank AG just a couple of weeks ago, in which he made the point that strategic sovereignty in Europe is closely linked to financial sovereignty in Europe. Let me put it maybe in a slightly different way. I mean, we've probably all of us have heard now this proverb where it says Europe has been overly dependent on energy from Russia, overly dependent on defense from the United States, and overly dependent on growth from from China. So basically 3 prerequisites for our very successful economic development over recent years. The one element that is probably missing here is that we've also been overly dependent on financing from the United States. Financing as a prerequisite, as a really very important element to spur growth, to spur innovation here in Europe. And to put it maybe in one question, which I've recently heard, could you imagine a US company that needs to undergo a transformation, a US company to rely only on European capital? The answer most likely would be not really. However, when we look at many European companies, it's really the fact that it's not just the capital sources, the capital resources that are there in Europe, but rather that it is a requirement to also go to the United States. So therefore, this link between strategic sovereignty and financial sovereignty is a very important one. It's one that really needs to be taken into account. This is why I strongly believe that this European Capital Markets Union is such an important, maybe the most important point to tackle also for the next European Commission. Whether it will be easier or not is something obviously I look very much forward to learning more from the discussion we will have soon. But I strongly believe it needs to be the highest point on the political agenda because, and now let's define it very carefully and very closely, it only has advantages. I can't see any single disadvantage from having this capital markets union. First, it is completely in line with what has been the driving point for Europe. Internal markets, strengthening internal markets, really taking away all the barriers we could have seen before, taking away all these barriers and integrating Europe wherever we can. Goods, markets, services, and capital. Now, when we look at the different stakeholders, it is obviously great for investors. If we had more integrated European capital markets, we would have broader opportunities to invest. We could invest in broader asset classes, broader internationally. We would have diversification, everything we would like to hope for. Second, it would be extremely advantageous for companies, for startups to have a broader capital pool. I mean, all too often we hear here in Berlin in particular that whenever there's a new company that really goes to scaling, so when it needs maybe 50, 100 million or so, that they say, yeah, we would like to have the capital, but Europe simply doesn't have the sources to provide this capital. We need to go to US capital providers and others. Or as one of Germany's leading venture capitalists really recently told me, he said, so his parents are teachers, he said, I just don't get it. Why is my work benefiting teachers in the United States, but not the teachers here in Europe, not here in Germany, because we could simply do it. And in that sense, you could say we do not have a capital problem in Europe. What we have is a capital allocation problem. How to allocate the vast amounts of capital that we have in the right way to foster growth, to foster innovation, and in that sense also to foster the sustainable transformation. And that's my third point. What we need for the sustainable transformation is that we need capital that also becomes available for those units that might not be easily financeable by bank debt. Why not? Because if you have a risky venture, you simply can't go to the bank and have certain collateral that you could put in. You need risk seeking. You need, therefore, more equity capital that comes to the place. And this is why, I probably could go on with this. This is why I so strongly believe that what Christian Sewing has pointed out again and again, that this capital markets union in Europe is such a very important element to our innovation, our growth, and in the end to our welfare going forward. Finally, let me just also on this side say that obviously there's a strong link, a long link between Deutsche Bank and ESMT. There have been numerous executives from Deutsche Bank who have been in our programs, in our executive education programs, in our degree programs, in the collaboration we have in various fields when it comes to the sustainable transformation, a climate neutral economy. Astrid already mentioned the professorship that is there. So therefore, I could just say I couldn't think of a better speaker for our series here. I think we have very important elements that we need to consider in our current situation, not made easier or not made more easily by what we've just seen in the European elections. But what I strongly believe in, and that maybe might be the bias given that I'm a finance professor, I strongly believe in the fact that we need strong financial markets, we need strong financial institutions in Europe to foster growth, to foster innovation here. And therefore, I think we can look forward to a great discussion on, obviously, the transformation that Deutsche Bank has seen, the transformation we need to see in Germany and in Europe, and therefore also to provide the prospects for us and maybe put this at the end, also to see the next level of disruption. And I say this in this room where disruption is probably most visible. You see still the idealized world of the GDR. Now we are here with students, executives from all over the world. We talk about capital markets that probably were not discussed for a very long time during the history of this building. So with this, again, a very warm welcome to Christian Sewing, and I look very much forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jörg Rocholl, for setting perfectly the stage for our discussion. And I think we will jump right into the discussions. A lot of topics to discuss. So please give again a warm welcome to Christian Sewing. Join me here on stage. Please take a seat here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I suggest that we will have a discussion, first of all, here on the panel, and then you are invited to put questions. And also the online audience is invited to put questions. You can start sending us already now your questions through the chat, and I will integrate them. So, well, Christian, before we dive deeper into some of the topics Jörg Rocholl mentioned, let's start with the top current topic, which is the election of the European Parliament. And I wonder, from your perspective, holding responsibility for one of the biggest banks in Europe, what's your stance on this, on the results? What do the results mean for the economy in Germany and in Europe? And also, we know that you're a strong advocate of the capital market union, Jörg mentioned. So what meaning does the election result have on this?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invite tonight. I really look forward to it. And in particular, when I read through the previous speakers, I really have to congratulate you for that format. It's fantastic to be here, so thank you. Look, it remains challenging, let me put it this way. You know, I was on a Sunday night when I saw the elections. I was not negatively surprised in terms of this is a complete disruption, because I think overall in all the polls and in also the market actually anticipated that we have, so to say, still a strong democratic middle, so to say, in Europe, but we have right-wing parties who gain momentum. Nevertheless, the elections have actually, at the end of the day, have shown that actually the democratic middle and the conservatives can have the lead. But then something happened which is, in my view, problematic, so to say, and we need to see how it goes over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and this is the snap elections in France. because I do believe that overall, when you think about Europe, when you think about capital markets, and Jörg, I have to say, I need to engage you for all the speeches one can give on Capital Markets Union, because you did a great job in highlighting why it's so important. There are two countries actually who are in the driver's seat and who have to make it happen, and that is France and Germany. Now, I'm too far away from the French politics, and I don't have all the details what could happen after the snap elections. But it could mean that the Capital Markets Union, for instance, is not one of the top 2 or 3 priorities anymore. And then happens exactly that what Jörg said, because I still remain convinced that the creation of the Capital Markets Union is the cheapest, but at the same time, the boldest economic push we can have for Europe. A lot of people think that the Capital Markets Union is the nicest thing for Deutsche Bank to increase profits. Well, it is good for Europe if we have that, and as we are a capital markets-oriented bank, it is also positive for us. But the real benefit of the Capital Markets Union is to get the broader financing into Europe and to grow, and to have finally a growth perspective, which we so miss in Europe. And in this regard, with, so to say, the add-on action in France, and I'm not judging on that, just what happened, I'm a little nervous that the most recent push, which we have seen from Germany and France, to really go with everything they have to push this Capital Markets Union. And I saw the French finance minister last Tuesday, and you could really see that this is on top of his priority, that hopefully not this is being pushed back. And therefore, I'm a little bit cautious. Other than that, to be honest, the elections, how they came out, were kind of priced in the market. Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned the gains of the right-wing parties in this election. What significance does this development have for the business location, Germany? What does it mean for foreign investors to look at Germany or to look at Europe and see what's going on here politically?
Well, the second point of your question is the most important one, and we shouldn't underestimate that. And therefore, I went public in January in the New Year's speech, actually here in Berlin, where Deutsche Bank did a New Year's greetings to our clients here in Berlin. The investors are looking at Germany and are concerned not only about what is going on in terms of economic growth, but let's tackle that later, because we also need to put everything into perspective. Jörg again said something very important, that we had kind of a golden decade. And therefore, that is one thing which is explainable, but where we need to take action. The real issue is that a lot of investors of this world actually see in Germany the location of stability, resilience, and democratic values. And a lot of investors, well, let me delete that. All investors of this world have a deep, deep interest in firm legal systems, in clear stability, and also in democratic values. Now, if a country, so to say, is kind of, at least by perception, but also by polls and now by elections, it is shown that we are not losing the democratic values. That would be far too much, and we should also not escalate the issue. But if people can see that there is a direction that also extreme right-wing parties are gaining more and more momentum, the investors' appetite is actually at least reconsidered. And you always have to think about Germany. If you think about an outside investor into Germany, you invested in Germany while you knew that actually the reward on investing is lower than in other countries, because you actually pay for democratic values. You pay for a stable legal system. You pay for predictable actions by a government. And if this perception is going away, that means actually that the risk premium is increasing. Now, this is not yet happening, but I warn that if we are not paying attention, and if we are not actually all, and this is not only pointing the fingers that politicians in Berlin need to do something different, it's actually the task of the society. It's our task as leaders to actually talk to investors and to repeat that what we hear and saying, look, it's our task that we make the political middle in each and every country, whether it's the Social Democratic Party, the Green Party, the Liberal Party, or the Conservative Party. You know what? That is then where people need to decide. But the democratic middle of the country needs to be strengthened, because people from the outside see in Germany a country of stability. And if this goes away, we will see that less and less investors will come into Germany, or we have to pay a far higher price for that. And therefore, I do believe also the elections which we have seen in Germany as part of the European election, as well as that what might come in the autumn when we think about parts in Eastern Germany, is something which we have to take damned seriously. Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned the business location in Germany, and you said this is something else. Let's quickly have a look on this before we talk about Deutsche Bank topics. I'm sure you are not convinced that Europe or Germany, that Germany is the sick man of Europe, as the Economist once titled. So mean. We all know it's not true if you look at the facts. But if you look at the role of banks for being really the infrastructure for all the transformations going on in every field, how do you see the business location right now?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I agree with you. Germany is not yet the sick man of Europe. But I also said 6 or 7 months ago, we need to pay attention that we don't become the sick man of Europe. And that's what I meant. I do believe that we all did a certain mistake. By the way, me too. I haven't actually valued enough between 2010 and 2020 that we had a golden decade in Germany. That was exactly that what Jörg was saying. I mean, we had defense for nothing. We had gas and energy almost for nothing. Mm-hmm. We had, by the way, which everybody forgets, I'm sure those of you who are finance related are not forgetting that, but people are taking for granted after 10 years that interest rates are zero, which is obviously a wrong assumption because it doesn't work over a long time. And we had China as a growth engine. So I have to tell you that, that Germany, with COVID then coming and with the awful war in the Ukraine, that Germany is showing with these kind of prerequisites which we had, then with the geopolitical events, that Germany is showing for 2 or 3 years kind of a zero growth is for me not a surprise. It was a surprise that we are not going into a recession. Now, I'm not saying it's great, but we should not over-escalate the situation that for 2 or 3 years we had no growth. And by the way, the German corporates are strong enough to go through this. The problem is a different one. We are not taking the right conclusions out of the new situation we are in. We need to rethink the setup in Germany. We need to rethink how we do our business, and we need to rethink the structural environment in which we are in Germany. Mm-hmm. And that means that we need to take now faster and clearer decisions when it comes to infrastructure investments, when it comes to the stability, the predictability, but also the competitiveness of energy prices in Germany. That's the luxury of being the CEO of Deutsche Bank. I have the great opportunity to talk to all kinds of corporate clients, not only the DAX 40 companies, but in particular, I'm coming from the Bielefeld area. This is a fantastic area like Swabia, where you have a lot of mid-cap family-owned companies. The number one problem these companies have, because there's a lot of manufacturing, is energy prices. And we can now tell that the energy prices are down by 40 or 50%. But the problem is they are 30% higher than in the US and than in other parts of this world. And of course, if you are a CEO, or even more important in this regard, if you are a family-owned company, you think about your next investments over the next 10 years, and you don't get the kind of clear certainty that energy prices in Germany will be kind of competitive to the US or to other parts of the world, for the first time, you may think about moving your business outside Germany. And therefore, it's so important that there is more clarity with regard to energy, infrastructure, investments into defense, coming to that in a second, why this is so important for us. And then, of course, we need to think about how we actually fill the skilled or the gap in skilled workforce, which is a huge issue. And to be honest, we need to rethink our attitude to work. We have a problem here.
Yeah.
We have a clear problem. And therefore, I'm saying we are not yet the sick man. But if we don't react and if we are too slow, I can tell you from Deutsche Bank is doing 65% of its revenues outside Germany. I can tell you the momentum and the speed of decisions in other countries of this world, in other regions, is faster, and we don't want to miss it.
You said we have to rethink a lot of topics, and one topic is we have to rethink the future of work and how to organize work. And Deutsche Bank, this is quite a very interesting topic, because you are some of the front runners who really are doing something. The Deutsche Bank, you want to cut back on home office again. You have set up an upper limit of 40% for home office. I guess not everybody is happy about this. So why do you think it's necessary, and how do you see, how do we have to organize the future of work?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I would have never expected that once COVID happened, that it works so smoothly how we organized ourselves. And I think this is valid for kind of all industries, but also for universities. I mean, it simply worked in a really good way. I also said, almost on day one, let's not over-celebrate that we are able to do everything from home. At the end of the day, and obviously best I can talk about a bank, we don't have an asset. We are not producing cars. We are not producing chemicals. What we are producing is services to our clients. And that means that actually the value of the human beings working together, thinking about innovations, thinking about how we can further improve the trust level, the confidence in Deutsche Bank, is actually the way people cooperate. And I always said, I don't want that we are losing, so to say, the inner brand of Deutsche Bank, because the best things are coming to light at Deutsche Bank when I put 4 or 5 people into a room and we're thinking about new solutions. And therefore, I always said, let's judge on work from home and on the success on work from home after 3 to 5 years. Because I think in the long-term run, if we don't have the people in a room in a regular way, then I think it could be negative for corporates and also for Deutsche Bank. That's number one. Number two, I grew up in sports. And I can tell you it's highly unfair. It is highly unfair to some of our people who have to work 5 days a week in branches where there was never a discussion that they can work from home. And others are trying to maximize their time at home and at best the Mondays and the Fridays together. And therefore, the real issue in the work from home discussion was, by the way, not cutting back from 60 to 40. The real issue was the second momentum, and that was saying Monday and Friday together is a no-go. Yeah. So in this regard, I do believe it has something to do with fairness. It has something to do with actually making sure that there is a Deutsche Bank inner brand generation, that we don't lose the way and the success of working together. And the third thing is, and I see many young people in this room, understandably, the young people actually wanted to come back. And the young people, the graduates, we are hiring every year 1,200 graduates all around the world. They would like to come into the bank in order to learn one-to-one from the seniors. And we can have the best online and video systems, but the way how you learn to actually judge whether a corporate is a good corporate or whether you should be rather concerned about providing a credit facility is the way you look over somebody's shoulder. And it may sound traditional, but you learn it if you look into the other one's eyes and if you listen to him. And therefore, I think also for the young people, for the education, for the long-term development, it's the right decision. And now, again, let's be clear. We are allowing work from home for 40% of the week. So, I mean, it's not too bad, right?
Right. You have been very clear about this. You were quoted saying we have to get used to work harder in the future, not only at Deutsche Bank, I understand it this way. But if you look, at the reality, it's different. Despite huge problems we are facing with labor work, with the pension funds, employees are demanding a 4-day week. I mean, it's just the opposite. People sometimes, have a different understanding of work. Do we have to rethink? Do we need in generally a new understanding of work?
I think what we need is, and it's always hard because we have so many hard-working people in Germany, and it would be unfair to just say everybody doesn't want to work hard anymore. That's not right. But overall, I call it differently. We need to have a new appreciation of work. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we come back to the 4-day work, which is, in my view, ridiculous, right? In particular for the same money. I mean, everybody in this world is wondering and saying, how do you make that math? You don't even have to go to ESMT. I mean, you can draw the calculation by yourself. It doesn't work. But let's decide with that. The problem starts, and I have children, I have the discussion at home sometimes with the wording work-life balance. That is a root problem, because I love work-life balance. I love my life, to be honest. But part of my life is work. The way we put it is always that life is the good one and work is the bad one. Life, in my view, does not work without work. And I have to tell you, I mean, yes, I also have bad days, and I have days in the morning where I think I don't want to get up. It's all too hard. But overall, I'm really happy to go to work. And it gives me something which really inspires me, because I think I can change something, I can do something, I can learn something. Also, that people don't believe. I'm learning every day so many new things which inspire me also, to be honest, that I still can learn it and that I'm able to learn it. And therefore, I think, first of all, we need to have a different view and appreciation that work is something positive. We can generate something, and work is so much needed in order to actually protect the prosperity we have in this country. And in my view, too often, we think that the good life we have here is guaranteed and covered by the state. And that's what we finally need to get rid of. I think the state is responsible for those people who have no chance or who are disabled to work, and we need to help them. But it cannot be that whenever somewhere a crisis is happening, that we call for the state and think, well, the state will bail me out. It doesn't work. And therefore, we need to work harder again. And last but not least, because we are here at the university, the average working hour in Germany per week after holiday, 25 hours a week. Second last in Europe. One of the biggest investors of this world is sitting in Singapore. If you pitch for the investments of this investor, he's, by the way, also looking at these statistics. Singapore is working 44 hours a week. Now, I'm not saying we need to go back to 44 hours. I'm not saying that. But the EU average is 33 hours. How can it be that at the same time we have a serious discussion about a 4-day week with the same salary, and people think that everything even gets better afterwards? It won't. It won't. And this is why we need to stand up, and we need to also be noisier, and we need to support those people also in the politics who are saying this does not work.
Let's talk about Deutsche Bank and your role at Deutsche Bank. Jörg Rocholl mentioned analysts who have been convinced in the past Deutsche Bank is beyond repair. They obviously were wrong. Since you became CEO in 2018, you have driven forward the reorganization of the company. You radically restructured the bank's business areas. You have steered the big tanker back on course, you can say. What was, if you look back, the biggest challenge for you as CEO you had to mention, and how did you deal with it?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's nice that people are describing it as positive, and that I all did it. At the end of the day, the 90,000 people did it, and my team did it. So I had potentially the big advantage at a time where it was not that easy at Deutsche Bank, that I knew the bank quite well. And most importantly, I think that I had the right feel what the strengths of the bank is and what is the weakness of the bank. And in this regard, the biggest challenge for me was actually being 6 months in the CEO job, being clear, robust, forceful, and decisive where the weaknesses are and to close down these weaknesses. And I was really afraid of doing this. And I could have done it at the end of the day, potentially 3 months earlier, but I was, so to say, put it always from the left side to the right side, because you are, so to say, attacking something which has been there for years or for decades, where people got used to. And then a fairly quiet, young, respectively, compared to others, CEO is coming saying, we are closing down that and that unit because I don't think that we are competitive.
So how do you make those kind of decisions? I mean, practically, do you have a circle around you, people advising you? Do you do it just, by, I don't know, get the right inspiration, the feeling, the facts? How do you do this?
Well, it's a mix of all, but and everybody does it differently. I'm certainly not doing it all on my own. I do not believe in the wisdom of the sole person. I believe a little bit more in the wisdom of a group. And I put together a group of 8 to 10 trusted people who knew the bank quite well, but also who came from the outside. And I had one outside advisor. Mm-hmm. And we went through, again, plans which I always had in mind when Paul Achleitner asked me in April 2018 to run the bank. He actually asked me to give him my strategy for the bank in April 2018. And I would say 85% of what I wrote to him in April 2018, we implemented in 19. But I really took my time in order to validate my assumptions. And as I, in particular, cut into one leg, so to say, of the investment bank into the equities business, and I was not a born investment banker, so I was rather coming from the credit risk side, I also didn't want to do the mistake that I'm judging about a subdivision or a division where at the end of the day I haven't grown up. And therefore I took my time, 6 to 9 months. I think I got good advice, but I also at the end of the day, I not only looked at the numbers, but also what are the emotions in the bank, what is the atmosphere, and most importantly, what is this bank standing for? Mm-hmm. And if you think about Deutsche Bank, at the end of the day, the roots and the start of Deutsche Bank in this city mm-hmm. was to be a corporate bank, the bank for corporates and helping them to go abroad. And that, I always said, we need to get back to that, what the bank is all about. And then we decided, in order to have that picture, what is really important? What do I need from a product side, from a regional side, from a client segment point of view? What is important? And then it actually becomes very clear. Last but not least, you need to have a great supervisory board chairman who covers you because, you will have days in between where you get bad news. And you need to have the feeling that there is somebody who believes in you, because I don't believe that there is any person who can do and take all these decisions without the right coverage.
As a CEO, how do you deal with criticism and mistakes? I mean, this is a difficult point. If we look at the takeover of Postbank, you publicly acknowledged mistakes and you said we did not fulfill our responsibilities here. So how do you deal with such difficult moments as a CEO, and why did you publicly apologize?
I really hate to correct you, but I didn't apologize for the takeover of Postbank because I think it was the right thing to do by my predecessors. I did apologize that we mismanaged the IT integration last year. Okay. And unfortunately, and I really have to say that the technology transformation went almost perfect. The real issue is that we underestimated the impact of such a transformation to our clients, to our own people. We did not inform well, we did not train well, and that resulted in huge backlogs. People could not even reach the bank. people did not understand how they actually can withdraw money or can rewrite a mortgage and so on. And to be honest, we completely, in my view, in this regard, failed on the service side. And then there is only one way. It was our mistake. And if I do a mistake, I have to apologize. And otherwise, I'm not leading by example, internally not. And also, there was nothing speaking, so to say, for us at that point in time, because we simply didn't provide a service to the level which we expect from ourselves and which our clients actually can expect. And at that point in time, I think acknowledging a mistake, and as it was a mistake which was felt by so many clients, I think it is not a problem to apologize. And therefore, my father always told me, if you have done a mistake, admit it and try to make it better, but don't sweep it under the carpet. And that's what we did. And at least I think it was recognized and it was, so to say, appreciated that we did not try actually to fool around. That doesn't make the mistake better, but I think it actually gave us, at the end of the day, the trust and the confidence of our clients that we can turn it around because we were honest about it.
Mm-hmm. And what are the learnings? What do you do with the learnings out of this? How do you implement a culture of openness, of dealing with mistakes, of, talking about different opportunities you have, of, establishing a culture of creativity in your company? It's a long-term process. Deutsche Bank tried in 2013 to implement a new culture. And if you now read the PowerPoints, actually, it was actually well done. But the problem was that we put the PowerPoint out to 80,000 people and says, read it and your culture has changed. Well, that doesn't work. I'm overemphasizing it a little bit, but you need to live it every day, every week, every month. And if you think you have done it, then you have potentially mastered 5 or 10%. So keeping the discipline in really changing the organization and living it day by day is, in my view, the most important task you need to do as a manager. Because we always underestimate how an organization is watching you, is monitoring you, is actually marking the statements you give out with a certain cultural direction to that what you are doing day by day in the organization. And even if you have done it right for 2 or 3 years, if you fail then after 3 years, people are saying he's not walking the talk. And in this regard, it's a constant task. And last but not least, it really means that you need to do a lot of people changes. So if I think about how the bank looks now compared to 10 years ago, I really do believe that a good degree of all the positive results is also based not only on the cultural change, but also on the people changes which we have done. Because sometimes it's not even a bad intention, but certain people cannot change. And then you as the manager need to take, in favor of the whole organization, the clear decision to replace. And that's what we did. Mm-hmm. That's clear words. I would like to open the discussion. We have received already many questions, and you're invited to raise your hands as well. I would like to put forward one question by the online audience. It comes from Heidelberg. A student of economy from Heidelberg, Tilman Hohlgräfe, asked about the capital union market. Do you see the recent financial packages by the German state as a right step towards more efficient capital allocation in the European financial market? Or were these investments rather ineffective spent capital that the free market could have distributed better through the price mechanism?
So I don't know, a very interesting question. I don't know specifically when we talk about financial package, what is meant by that. But in general, I think the market must decide where the capital goes, full stop. You cannot override the market for a long term. Now, if we think about certain industry strategies, if we think about that, also, in order to keep the sovereignty of Europe or to increase European sovereignty, and you you're actually thinking about allocating capital to sectors which we don't have, but where we are really dependent on, and we need to actually make sure that we start growing them here, I think this is a legitimate thought. Now, it's always then the question, how much capital needs to go into, how much sponsoring needs to go into, and couldn't be that better done by the Capital Markets Union. Now, the real issue is, the lesser we have a capital markets union, the more it is actually needed that public money goes into that. And therefore, again, a capital markets union would be a fantastic economic push for Europe and for Germany, actually, in order to reduce public spending in terms of financial packages, because the market will, so to say, then replace that. And in this regard, I think the basis for European growth is the capital markets union. And if I may just give you one example, because I think sometimes the problem with the capital markets union is that people don't really understand what it is. And I always describe the capital markets union with the comparison like a big harbor. If you think about the Hamburg harbor, people are always looking at me like this, saying, what does he want to say now? Well, think about the Hamburg harbor and think about the annual discussions you have in the Hamburg government, that actually in order to also get the latest big ships into the harbor, you need to actually make it deeper and deeper because otherwise the big ships are not coming anymore. And that's the same with the Capital Markets Union. The Capital Markets Union, all what we want to achieve is a deep liquid market. Why? Because the first thing investors are talking about is actually, do I get my money back? And you only get your money back, or the likelihood that you get your money back is higher if there is more liquidity in the market. Secondly, if you think about the Hamburg harbor, it's not only the harbor for the big container ships, but you see side arms in this harbor for other industries. And they are coming to this harbor because there's a lot of liquidity in, and there are side arms. So new industries are coming to that harbor. It's the same with the Capital Markets Union. When we have a deep Capital Markets Union, you will have far more private equity, far more venture capital, which is important for startup companies and so on. So a Capital Markets Union is actually the base investment we need to do in order to grow, in particular, the new economy. And therefore, I would say, yes, financial packages sometimes help, but the real help cannot be replaced if you don't go for the Capital Markets Union.
Okay. So here's one question. Just raise your hands and we pass over the mic. Please introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Fanne, a lawyer. Wasn't it a big blow to the Capital Markets Union idea to confiscate Russian money?
Okay.
No, then to be honest, I do believe if you do it as a regular measure, I would agree with you. If you do it as a response to that, what happened, the vast majority of the capital markets participants understand that. And by the way, they kind of price that in. Now, you can't do it in each and every instance, and therefore I agree, you need to carefully review that. I would say in that instance, the Capital Markets Union would not be negatively impacted by that.
Okay, here we go.
My name is Raban von Arnim. I have a question towards the capital market. What are your arguments for the Capital Market Union to countries like, for example, Ireland, or Croatia, because it could have the same effect as it has with the German companies, so go to the New York Stock Exchange instead of going to Frankfurt. So what are your arguments to smaller countries to pursue them, that they go and say, okay, we are going to join our European capital market?
Well, I do believe that in particular for the smaller countries, the availability for capital is even more important than for the larger countries, because the pools are even more limited. And you can see that actually a lot of financing to these smaller countries is actually done then by other countries, or these companies, when they are successful, are going even into other regions. So over time, there is even more limitations to the country, the inner country financing capacity, like the countries you are mentioning. than for the larger countries than France, Germany, or Italy. And therefore, I do believe that actually for the smaller countries, the Capital Markets Union is, in my view, in the long term, even more important. Now, the problem is, therefore, your question is so super valid, is actually what does it mean for the next 3 to 5 years? What kind of power, what kind of benefits do I hand over to something I don't know? And therefore, it is so important that we talk about the right transition. Therefore, it's so important that people don't think that actually they lose attractiveness, that they give up power and have no chance actually to finance their economy anymore. But with the Capital Markets Union in Europe, actually, you also open actually the market for kind of a European banking market. That means that also European banks would be far more incentivized to do more business, for instance, in those countries which have fantastic growth rates. So I think over time, actually, it would further improve the growth rates even of the smaller countries, and they have a far better diversified refinancing market.
Thank
and
you.
it gets cheaper, by the way, for these countries.
Okay, so here are 2 more questions. Could you pass over the mic, please? The first row, then the second row, and then over there.
Ivan Filipov, Global Greens. You were talking a lot about the future, and for me, Deutsche Bank is a right place to speak about the future. I still remember profound research done by Deutsche Bank in 2021, which actually predicted many of the trends, of the current trends, which was called the age of disorder. Therefore, I would like to ask about the future. So my question is, what do you see the main potential threats for the banking and the financial industry for the years to come, and what the opportunities are, whether they are coming from the defragmentation, from the new players like fintech. And if you allow, maybe there's a second question about the decoupling. So a lot of people, especially in Germany, are speaking about the decoupling from China, obviously the benefits and the opportunities, but what the opportunities and what are the pressures would come if this decoupling, and whether this decoupling is feasible first, and second, whether these opportunities and whether these kind of costs are can be balanced, and whether it has the potential to be fully accomplished.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me start with the second one. I don't believe in decoupling. I think it is the worst thing what can happen, in particular to an export-oriented nation like Germany. I'm a big believer in getting the balances right and in, so to say, de-risking. And to be honest, in this regard, you had far better speakers than I am. You had Ola here, you had Roland Busch here. But I think the German corporates are all doing a really good job in thinking about the risks of too much dependency into one country and are starting to de-risk. But that is a multi-year effort. And this is not something which you can do over time. Jörg was so nice and talked about the turnaround of Deutsche Bank and said, well, I did it. Honestly, my predecessor, John Krein, started to de-risk the balance sheet. If John Krein wouldn't have done that work, I wouldn't have been in the position actually to turn around Deutsche Bank, so to say, then in the next 2 or 3 years. And therefore, I think de-risking and putting out a diversified business model is something which takes 5 to 10 years at least. But I'm actually quite convinced that the German corporates are doing a good job. And even if you think about China, well, go into the details, because a lot of corporates are doing actually local production for local consumption. So it's also a little bit of a ring-fenced nature. So therefore, decoupling, I think, is the worst what we can do. De-risking is the right thing. And there, I think we are on the right way. To your first question, threats for the banking industry. First of all, and of course you expect that from me, but I would say that the banks are in a much more robust and solid situation than ever before. We did big mistakes in the global financial crisis, also Deutsche Bank. We learned from that. We restructured ourselves. If you think about liquidity, if you think about capital, if you think about diversification in our refinancing via deposits, and if you think about the recurring profitability, I think the banks are on a completely different level than before. And to be honest, therefore, I'm not nervous that there could be a real threat for the European banks. And you know, what happened last year to Credit Suisse was clearly something, or to the US regional bank, was a real test to the European banks. And I think that we have all shown that we are on a very different level. Now, going forward, what are the risks? Technology. If you are not applying and give a lot of resources to technology, you will not be able to compete. I think the level of technology is still underestimated, and what technology will do to your business model. It's number one. Number two, with all the good things in regulation, I really do believe that the majority of the regulatory changes which we got here in Europe and also in the US were the right ones. People are always thinking I'm criticizing the regulators. No, that was the right thing. We have now a solid banking system. But like always in life, now we have to make sure that we are not overdoing it, because the competitive disadvantage we have in Europe versus the US banks is huge, because the US actually started to deregulate in 2017. So we need to be a bit careful that we are not losing the competitive race with the US banks. And that goes back to something what Jörg said at the start. We always think about European sovereignty when it comes to energy, when it comes to autos, when it comes to whatever. It's all fine. But the basis for all is that you get the financing in place. We cannot let it happen that Europe is majority-wise dependent on non-European banks. And that also means that from a regulatory point of view, we need a level playing field. I don't want to be better treated, but I want to have the same treatment. So technology, regulation is key. And thirdly, it is solid management. If you ask me what is the biggest risk, what can happen to Deutsche Bank, is that we let loose, that I lose my discipline, that I lose my focus, that I'm not there any day, that I'm not seeing the weaknesses. And if that day comes that I see it myself, that the passion is a little bit lower, then you need to stop. Doesn't make sense anymore. You need to be on this job every day. Otherwise, you will not be successful.
Okay. Another question here in the second row, please.
Hello, I'm Simon Hicks. I'm a student here. And I want to ask about data and decision-making and climate. So it wasn't too long ago that I was at another event with one of HSBC's climate transition leaders, who noted that the quality of data is a huge bottleneck, particularly around sustainability in supply chains regarding investment, divestment decisions, etc. My question to you is, what role do you think that banks have in accommodating the transition? And is data and the quality of data currently inhibiting the kinds of decisions that you're making?
So I think we have a huge role to play, simply from the number of, or the amount of financing which needs to be done. If you think about the green transition in Europe, the estimates are between 600 and 700 billion each year, which needs to be invested in order to come to net zero in 2050. And I think we all agree in this room that this is absolutely a must, that we need to go this way. We must go. This is our responsibility to ourselves and to the next generation. 600 billion euros. I mean, this is a huge amount. Think about how the German parliament, rightly so, discussed and fortunately approved the 100 billion extra budget for defense 2 years ago. We are talking about 600 billion euros each year until 2050, which needs to be financed. This cannot be done by any public money. No finance minister of this world can do it. By the way, yes, again, we need the capital markets union for that, but we need actually banks which are capable to do the financing too. So you need a kind of a three-way financing: public, banks, capital markets union. And in this regard, I do believe that we have a huge task and a huge obligation to finance that transition. Most important, and this is the discussion we have with a lot of NGOs, and I know it's not an easy one, and I'm taking a lot of criticism for that, and I understand. But sustainability and ESG is not only E, it is also S and G. And S is very important for me, and that is the social component. So if we think about making a company green, the most important is that we allow this company, which may be, so to say, brown at this point in time, to allow it to transition into green. So the most important banks can do funds can do is transition finance. For that, we need the right regulation, because the regulation for today is a kind of as of now taxonomy. What we need is to pave the way over the next 5 to 10 years to allocate the money there where it's now brown, but we get it into green. If we finance that, then this is the key role of banks, actually.
Okay. So could you pass the mic over there? Last row, I think there was somebody raised his hand. And in the meantime, I'll take the chance and spread a question here from my tablet. Yishnu Subarai is asking, given the current economic setbacks all over the world, which country, in your opinion, is stable and has a good future for business and career opportunities, probably from the German or European perspective?
Well, whatever I say will be wrong. No, but I do believe that, so we have done a study actually, which an internal one, which is called The World in 2030. To be honest, in the next 5 years, I do believe that the US is one of the clear winners, given its huge investments into technology. It's the capital which is there. I'm not talking about Capital Markets Union again, but simply the technology, the innovation, the money which is allocated to the US. So US will strive for the next 5 years. Now, there are also question marks going forward. You need to see the debt level, you need to see where the interests are, but for the next 5 years, honestly, growth will be there in the US, definitely.
No matter who will be the president?
Yes. Yes. And by the way, this is actually always a really good question. At the end of the day, there are obviously huge differences between them. But when it comes to economy, when it comes to making sure that America is first in the economy, there is not such a big difference. Both will protect their economy very, very much. And I'm not saying whom I favor, to be honest, right?
Okay.
But no, second question was, there's one other country, and this is, it's simply Berlin, what's happening is India. India will strive for the next decade. And why? Innovation, technology, they now go from a service country into a manufacturing company, education, and young people. This is the recipe for success.
Yeah, we could talk about this very long, but I'll take another question over there, please.
Yeah. Is this working? Yes.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Good evening, Moritz Heil is my name. I'm a lawyer by profession, not an economist, so I apologize in advance if you don't find my question very complex.
Usually the lawyers have the most complex questions, even internally at Deutsche Bank. So
this one is going to be easy. I want to ask you about the future of cash, because when we travel abroad, we all know that like cash has almost completely disappeared, it feels, whereas it still plays like a significant role in Germany. So is that going to last in your point of view? And if so, why and to what extent?
Yeah, and what's your stance on the digital euro, by the way? Maybe you can link this with the answer.
So I think, Germany is particular. And to be honest, I'm potentially too traditional. I cannot see Germany without cash. Now, overall, I mean, cash in the pocket, right, in your pocket. Overall, the degree of cash is reduced and has been reduced also in Germany a lot. In particular, COVID really made it happen. But I think the Germans are really a society who kind of, and this is good, in my view, this is really good, who have real trust in their currency, and they want to see part of their currency, so to say, physically. And therefore, I do believe that cash is always playing a certain role, but a decreasing one, also in Germany. Digital euro, look, I always have some obstacles and headaches if something is being introduced by a public agency or public institution and is not, so to say, a complete market in innovation. Now, I understand I understand some motives by the ECB. And therefore, we as the Association of the Banks are in principle supporting that. But we want to have certain items right. Let me give you two. It cannot be that it is something which is, so to say, done in competition to the banks, and that at the end of the day, we even need to pay for a new payment platform, which is operated by somebody else. But I do think we will find a solution on that one. The second item is really an important one, and that is how much of the digital euro can be with each person and to what limit. Because if you think about it, in a crisis, in a real crisis, and you have an unlimited digital euro, it can actually result in a hefty reaction on the liquidity markets. And I'm not sure that this is wanted, and I can see that the ECB has a clear view on this one, and also the European Commission. So I do believe, if I think about what is done and what is implemented by other regions, we will not avoid it, we will support it, but we need to get certain frameworks right, and then I can live with that.
Okay. So are there more questions? I've seen some hands here, over there. The third row from the last, yeah, that one. Mm-hmm.
Hello,
Yes.
Hergen Freris. I'm working at a bank in Berlin. I have a question on your...
At our bank?
No, at Berlin Hyp.
Okay. Well, there's always a chance to come to us, right?
Yes, thanks for that. I have a question on your remote work policy. So do you enforce that policy, and how do you enforce it? Do you enforce it at an individual level for all 90,000 employees? And do you have like agreements with the worker councils about that?
So now I hope you have seen that I'm very open, but we are still in some discussions with the Workers' Council, and I find it utterly unfair if I would announce something here before not having all agreements in place. But overall, it will be a rule which is then valid for all 90,000 people globally. That also goes back to the fairness question. I want to have the same rules in this regard for everybody on this planet, yes.
Mm-hmm. I would like to add a question which fits to this one. Stefan Traub is asking, what arguments do you use to convince young talents to see their future at Deutsche Bank and not at more agile fintechs?
Look, first of all, you need to want to bank. You need to want to work in a broader environment of the financial industry. Now, what speaks for us is actually that we have both. If you look at some parts of our business, it is quite innovative. If you think about what we are doing and what kind of solutions we are offering to corporate clients and also retail clients, I don't think that we have to hide in front of fintechs. We are very far ahead. Of course, they are coming from a new start. It looks for that what they are doing in their smaller segment. It looks, so to say, more appealing. But I think we don't need to hide. And actually, we are working a lot with fintechs together when it comes to innovation. The real reason why I think it is potentially in the long term even more interesting to work for a bank than a fintech is I don't think that there is any industry in the world where you have a chance to see the whole economy like if you see it when you work for a bank. You see everything. You see each and every industry. You see each and every government decision. You see each and every public decision, what impact it has on the capital markets. You have everything. It's like being the spider in the net. And that makes it so appealing. I mean, if you really want to learn economics, if you want to learn what certain decisions result in, how industries are connected with each other, what, so to say, the basic of industrial growth is, then you best learn it working for a bank. And that, in my view, is really appealing.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the fintechs. That's an interesting topic as well. How do you see the relationship between fintechs and traditional banks? Is the right approach collaboration, as you mentioned, or is it more competition in the end?
Both. Mm-hmm. Both. We have agreements with fintechs when it comes, for instance, in the private banking where we are collaborating. where we're using actually their platform, their technology, because they started, so to say, from a green basis, and it's partially wonderful technology. We have in some parts still older technology, and therefore we are using the fintechs, and they're actually happy to work with us because with that they have access to 15 million retail clients in Germany. Potentially we know a little bit better how regulations work because that is a new stuff for them. So there are a lot of examples where we work together, and there are a lot of examples where we are, so to say, in fair but fierce competition. And that's good. I think at the end of the day, a lot of fintechs have done a magnificent job. They actually challenged us because for years and years, we thought that the client is coming to us. Also because of fintechs, we learned that we need to go to clients.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a question on the second row, please. Here, the young gentleman.
Thank you so much for your talk today. It's very interesting. As for me, I'm a student at Humboldt University, just on the opposite side of the road, actually. And I'm also studying business and the finance. And I'm writing my bachelor work in also private equity and venture capital. I'm also interested, this is the best opportunity to ask a person that is expert in that topic. I would really want to know, what do you think about what are the problems that the PE and venture capital funds have to finance the renewable energy projects? We understand that renewable energy projects are capital intensive. Of course, like if they develop on the first stage, they're very risky. What do you think, what could help develop those projects from the PE and venture capital side? And what are the problems? Maybe very shortly you can comment on that. Thank you so much.
Look, it's a very complex question because at the end of the day, the easy answer, the simple answer is we need a broader financing base for these projects because there is not enough venture capital and PE capital around which can actually stem all that. And if you think about the industry which you are referring to finance that, it is almost for a bank to do that with a normal credit facility. It is impossible because the return and a first positive cash flow sometimes comes in year 10, 15, or 18. Now, I'm not saying that banks are not able to take risks. I mean, that's our life. That's what we are doing every day with each and every decision. But if it's that far out, and again, I'm not criticizing the regulators, the penalty we get from the regulators to put additional capital into the facility in order to actually also show the risk which is involved is huge. It doesn't make sense with the margins we earn. And therefore, we need alternative financing sources. That is venture capital. But you really think that I only have one record, and that is the Capital Markets Union. But it is actually, again, part of that, because with that, you have all kind of financings. And by the way, all kind of investors from around the world. And that makes a capital market at the end of the day. And therefore, I think it's the broad and more diversified financing sources which we need to create. And the more we have liquid markets, the more venture capital is actually coming into. Now, on top of that, you need certain taxation rules. You need certain incentives. That is also then a structural and also a political question. But the real item is actually to broaden the basis for financing.
Okay, I'm afraid that time is running out now. So I'm really sorry if you don't find the chance to put your questions, but I would like to put one last very brief question to you, and I think it's of interest of many of you because we have a lot of young talents here, a lot of prospective leaders sitting here. Deutsche Bank has about 90,000 employees, huge responsibility. What characteristics do you think future or prospective leaders would need to, to really manage all these difficult decisions, to lead a company through the crisis? Could you name maybe 4 or 5 most important characteristics?
Yeah. So if you think about people with a leadership responsibility going forward,
yeah,
it is the ability. So number one is the ability to focus. I tell you, I have such a playground. If I let my mind go, I mean, I could install a playground in each and every corner of Deutsche Bank, and there are many, many corners. So be focused on that, what is really the bank all about. You need to know where you are strong, and on that you focus. Mm-hmm. Don't open too many side events. Number 2 is linked to number 1. This is, once you have done a good degree of analysis, you need to be decisive. If you are not decisive in a company with 90,000 people, the company eats you alive. So you need to put a decision at some point in time. And it doesn't mean quick decisions. It must be well thought through. So potentially before you come to number 3, you must have an analytical judgment, right? So decisive in number 3. Number 4 is in my view, in an organization like that, and the more I can see it, and actually we have a really good relationship among the DAX companies, and if I see other leaders, you need to be able to work in a team. It sounds easy, but for me, next to the expertise, the focus and the decision making, if somebody is not able to integrate him or herself and is a team player, I will never go for that person. Never, ever. We need people who can, fight with me in the boardroom like hell. But once we have a decision, we go out of the boardroom, it's one decision. I mean, it's clear. And then we're going for that. So team orientation is super important. And number 5 is, which is in my view, as important, potentially most important, in particular when you come out of a turnaround story, is resilience. And that is also, if I see young people here, it's also physical resilience. You need to be fit. It is, and that means also a certain discipline to your lifestyle. And it's not that I'm not going to a nice party. I love it, right? But you need to have a discipline to yourself. In my view, you need to do sports. You need to get your mind off. Because otherwise you will not be resilient enough to take the pressure.
Thank you so much, Christian Sewing, for your openness, for sharing your insights. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vielen Dank. Danke.
That was extraordinary. Thank you so much, Christian Sewing, for your openness and for this highly, highly interesting discussion. And thank you for your contributions. Thanks for being with us. In the name of the organizers, I would like to invite you for a small reception. Cold drinks are awaiting us, so have a nice evening and come back home safely. Goodbye.